It was Halloween, 2015. I was in 7th grade, just old enough to be a bit more independent. I know that may sound late to some of you, but my parents are very strict and constantly worrying about every little thing I did. Halloween, though, was my favorite time of year. There's just something about the crisp fall air that always made it so enticing to run off and explore outside. My best friend Eric lived on a street not far from ours. Our street was alright for trick-or-treating, but his went all out. They had a block party every Halloween where they'd close off the road on either end and set up tables and games. Bobbing for apples, things like that. And the man on the end of the street always set up a haunted house maze in his garage. He was a cool guy, probably in his late 60s. He started doing the mazes when his kids were young and kept it up for the neighborhood kids even after his had all graduated. Eric was more friendly with him than I was. I think his older brother was close with one of the man's sons, so he was used to coming by early to help out. This year I thought it sounded like a good time, so I volunteered to join them. We got to the house around 4 p.m. and the owner, who we'll call Mr. Smith, offered us snacks and candy as payment for our help. He was running back and forth from his house to various party cities for last-minute decorations, so we were in charge with decorating the hand wall. The hand wall is a classic in haunted mazes. It's basically just a temporary roll-in wall that stands a couple of feet parallel to the back of the garage. The wall is covered in black felt and has a series of holes for people to stick a hand through and pretend to grab you as you walk by. We were coating it in fake blood splatter and spider webs and things like that. It was a lot of fun. I remember Eric trying to start a blood fight, flicking me with his paintbrush only to get upset when I tried to do it back. I guess I splashed his shoes, which he was sure would be ruined if he didn't clean them immediately. I didn't know what the big deal was. They weren't new and they weren't even good shoes, but he left and I continued to work on the wall alone. I have to admit it was creepy being in there even in the daytime. Not much light came into the garage, even with the garage door left open, as the opening was draped over by blackout curtains. Mr. Smith had extended the maze about 10 feet out of the garage onto the driveway, using extra rolling walls that snaked around into the inner portion of the maze. It really was a maze, not just a winding path. There were multiple forks so you could decide which way to go. You could legitimately get lost in there with the strobe light on. It had been about 30 minutes since Eric left, and I was starting to wonder if he ditched me when I heard him coming back in through the drapery. It sounded like he was trying to sneak in without me hearing him, so I knew he wanted to scare me. Of course, now I had no choice but to scare him first. Those are the rules. I had my shoes off already, so I had the upper hand. Padding around quietly, I crept barefoot through the maze and to my right, assuming Eric would come in to the left the way we had come in before. Sure enough, as I went around through the curving black walls, I heard footsteps on the other side, but saw nobody on mine, so I continued around, looping through the center of the maze to get behind him. Only when I came around the corner, there was nobody there. I wasn't quite ready to give away my position, so I kept on slowly walking around through each section of the maze, hoping to catch Eric in his prank and scare him right out of those crappy shoes. I could hear him breathing now. It sounded like he was trying to sound older and bigger to intimidate me, but this time as I rounded the corner to exactly where Eric should be, I was surprised to find a grown man instead. He was large and portly, balding badly and dressed in gym clothes. I shouted out, "What are you doing?" before I saw who it was, and we were both startled. He didn't seem to have known I was in there, but he played it off like he'd been trying to scare me, which would have been far less creepy if I had any idea who he was. He claimed he was a friend of Mr. Smith who was helping out with the haunted maze. I told him Mr. Smith wasn't home at the moment and that he should come back a little later, and he agreed, leaving me be. I was a little spooked, but it seemed harmless enough, so I got myself another snack and went back to work on the wall. I'd finished up on the one in the back and was ready to move to the other hand wall, but I decided on a bathroom break first and went inside. I came back out a few minutes later and began working on the blood splatter, though this time in front of the scarecrow prop, which had me admittedly on edge even though I knew it was fake. To be completely transparent, I may have poked it once or twice for confirmation. It was a prop. After a few more minutes of painting, I began to feel uncomfortable again. I felt like I was being watched, and I knew it wasn't the scarecrow. I stopped what I was doing and looked around, landing on one of the holes in the wall, and sure enough, there was an eyeball staring right back at me. I screamed my head off, and the man came out laughing, playing it off like a prank, but I wasn't having it. I went straight out of the maze as fast as I could, and ran all the way home.